Welcome to another edition of Here We Are. I am your host, T.R. Mugabe. On May 25th, 1787, when the delegates met in Pennsylvania to draft a Constitution of the United States, they didn't have my foreparents in mind. However, the Articles of the Constitution of the United States did create, in Article 3, judiciary power vested in one Supreme Court. It was not until February 1st, 1865, that Article 13, Section 1 was added to the Constitution to get rid of slavery and involuntary servitude. 5 years later, on March 30th, 1870, Article 15 was added to the Constitution, which gave my people the right to vote. This time on Here We Are, we will discuss the African American and the court system in the United States. But first, this report from L.S. Mugabe.
The Supreme Court of the United States is the highest court in the nation. One of the basic duties of the 9 men and women that sit on this court is to determine if the federal, state, or local governments are acting according to the U.S. Constitution. The Supreme Court was created under Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. The first Supreme Court appointees were made by President George Washington. President Washington appointed more people to the Supreme Court than any other president. He appointed 11 to the Supreme Court, 3 Chief Justices and 8 Associate Justices. The first Supreme Court had 6 members on it. Since 1869, there has been 9 members on the Supreme Court, one of whom is selected to be Chief Justice. The first Chief Justice was John Jay, and the present Chief Justice is William Rehnquist. The U.S. Constitution set no special qualifications to be a Supreme Court justice. It only says that the person must be appointed by the President with advice and consent of the Senate. The court meets regularly in the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. The year begins the first Monday in October and usually ends in June. At the end of the Supreme Court session in June 1991, Justice Thurgood Marshall, the only African American to serve on the United States Supreme Court, announced his retirement. In July 1991, President George Bush announced his choice to replace Justice Marshall. President Bush's choice is 43-year-old African American federal judge Clarence Thomas. Since Judge Thomas' name has been sent forward to the Senate Judiciary Committee, the attackers and supporters have come from many fronts. On Here We Are, we will be discussing the African and the courts and the United States. This is L.S. Mugabe for Here We Are.
Our guests today are the Honorable Judge Earl Strayhorn of the criminal court system here in Cook County. We also have here former appellate court judge of Illinois, the Honorable Eugene Pincham. Welcome both of you to our show today.
Yeah, thank you.
There are several branches of the court system. I want you both to speak upon them, to educate us on the different parts of the court system.
Gene? Judge?
Okay, don't both act at the same time, okay?
Well, if I may digress for a moment, when you made the statement that when the delegates met in 1787 to draft the Constitution of this nation, that they didn't have our forebears in mind, quite the contrary, I suggest to you, they did have us in mind.
Okay, in what capacity?
In fact, they had us in mind in the first article, Article 1, Section 2, when it provides that our forebears would be counted as 3/5 of a person for the purposes of representation in the Congress of the United States. The Constitution, they had us in mind, for example, when they provided in the Constitution that Congress should have no right to interfere with the importation of slavery until the year 1808. They had us in mind, for example, when they provided the provision that, in essence, a slave escaping from a slave state into a free state must be returned to the master in the slave state upon demand of the master. Those 3 provisions in the Constitution clearly reflects, not only reflects, but certainly states specifically that they did have us in mind, not in mind as a citizen,
Okay.
but had us in mind as slaves.
Okay, well then I should have rephrased that.
All right.
Okay. Now you're going to tell me about the different branches of our court system.
Well, we have a state court system, of course, with the circuit court being the trial level. Circuit court judges are elected by the people for a term of 6 years. They serve until they retain every 6 years on the ballot if they obtain 60% of the voting, those yes votes on the proposition. Circuit court judges in turn elect associate judges. And there are approximately 450 or 475 circuit and associate judges in Cook County. The next level is the Appellate Court of Illinois, and appellate court judges are also elected by the people. The Appellate Court of Illinois, 1st District, geographically is comprised of Cook County, and there are 4 other geographical districts, 4 other districts in Illinois, geographical, and they're elected too by the citizens of the district from which the judge is running. Appellate court justices serve for a period of 10 years, and they, in fact, sit as appellate courts over the circuit and the associate judges. Then, of course, there's the Illinois Supreme Court. 3 Illinois Supreme Court justices come from Cook County. 3 come from Cook County. The other 4 come from the other 4 judicial districts, which are synonymous to the appellate court districts, the 4 districts that I mentioned to you a moment ago, which comprises a total of 7 justices on the Illinois Supreme Court, 3 from Cook County and 4 from the geographical areas downstate. Then you have the federal court system, which is the United States District Court, located at 219 South Dearborn. The next level is the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit, which is also located at 219 South Dearborn, and of course the United States Supreme Court, which has jurisdiction over the federal courts as well as, in certain instances, over the state court judgments. Now, within the Circuit Court of Cook County, you have divisions. There are, I believe, 13 divisions: Chancery, Law, Juvenile, Municipal, and what have you, and Criminal, of course. I served, and the judge running for the circuit court runs as the candidate for that court, and once elected, he is then assigned to a division by the chief judge of that court. The chief judge of the circuit court, in turn, is elected by the elected circuit court judges, who, as I said, assigns the judges to the various divisions. When I was on the circuit court, I was assigned to the criminal division. My colleague and former law partner, Judge Strayhorn, was then and is now assigned also to the criminal division. I hasten to point out to you that of all the 13 divisions, each division has a presiding judge, who in turn is appointed by the chief judge, who's coming for it. We only have 1 African-American and 1 black who is a presiding judge over a division. And that has been the situation for the last 40 years. Although the number of divisions and the number of presiding judges have doubled in the last, 15 or 20 years, we have not acquired an additional black judge over a division. And the power of the judicial system on a circuit court level is one in the presiding judge. And in spite of our efforts, we have been unable to acquire an additional black, and the one we have now is Arthur Hamilton, who is the presiding judge over the juvenile division, and that position has been occupied by a black with the exception of a few years for the past 40 years. Wendell Green was the first black judge who presided over that.
One correction, Gene. There's now a second black serving as a presiding judge, and that's Ellis Reed.
But
he's over the municipal division, yes. But that was just a recent appointment.
Now, what is the responsibility of a judge in the courtroom? Now, you can speak from the criminal aspect and you can speak from the civil, but I'm going to ask you first, Judge Strayhorn.
Well, there's really no differentiation between whether a case is civil or criminal. A judge's function is to listen to and resolve disputes that come before that judge. The dispute may be a civil dispute between citizens. One citizen suing another for relief for whatever, a tort or a contract dispute or something of that sort. Those cases are taken care of in the civil branch of our court.